Hello, I'm Tan the Tan BOTC channel, and I've been wondering how I would do this video. I might do like me playing gameplay of The Witcher 3, like do a Witcher 3 video and a Skyrim video or something. But since it beating out Skyrim, though Skyrim has been in that like 60 mil or whatever sales place for like 12 years, and it only just begun finally beating it after like waiting for it to finally get up there for 10 years. So it still has a way to go to beat Skyrim when it comes to overall how long it's been on that top sales list or whatever of games. So yeah, and I wanted to talk about a few things. There's a bunch of different subjects I would love to talk about with both of these. I don't know how to tackle them. I usually like to make these videos a little shorter and show off like what I collected from the series over time. Also, I have a gold Alduin off the side here. Couldn't get everything in the shot. I also couldn't find I have an Xbox official magazine of Witcher 3 as well. Let me show you. It's actually, I have Witcher 2 here though. But I couldn't find my copy of The Witcher 3 for some reason. I could only find Witcher 2. So that stinks. I don't know where the frick it is, but I'll find it eventually. But yeah, I want to show you some of the books I have. Also talk a little bit about both. When it comes to it, I don't think sales, it's the same with like box office. I mean, Transformers movies did great at the box office, even though I don't think they're very good movies. The Michael Bay ones, mostly the later ones, but yeah, most of them did pretty decent at the box office, which maybe not late ones, but you know, it doesn't always say something's that amazing. And technically, even stuff like Sonic and Five Nights, while I am happy they get sequels, they're technically not amazing films either, or that good, but they're not bad either. But when it comes to it, I don't think sales on how much a game is done. Sometimes it is. I think gaming is a little easier to predict with that than movies, but I don't honestly think either of these games are like best RPG. If you honestly asked me, I would say stuff like Chrono Trigger, Dragon Age Origins, the KOTOR games. And you really got to ask yourself what an RPG is, role-playing game. And even I remember Ackman's thing where somebody said Diablo isn't a role-playing game, and all he replied was, "Gee, I wonder what role I should play in this game." And technically, these are both very different games from one another. They both give you something each that the other one doesn't. Hard to explain. That would be a detailed thing, of course. But where The Witcher, you're mostly playing either Geralt or the new one, Ciri. You're playing the role of a Witcher, though. They might be somewhat different from one another, but you're still playing just one role. Now, if it was a game that let you play, like, Ciri, Triss, Dandelion you could pretend is, like, the equivalent of a bard in, like, Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And then you got your Witcher characters, Ciri and Geralt. That would feel like if you could choose between those characters, they're actually different roles that you can play as. But since it's mostly strict on that, it's not entirely a role-playing game. And dialogue, even though it's got great dialogue options, and you could argue better story and dialogue than Skyrim, it's not technically a role-playing game. Not in the same sense, and dialogue isn't all that a role-playing game should be known for. There are other aspects of it, such as how you build your characters and such, and your role, which you can much easier do in a Elder Scrolls game. Back from Morrowind to, like, if you compared the entire Witcher series to the Elder Scrolls series, Elder Scrolls wins hands down. The first Witcher was just very hard to play. It's only on one platform until the remake comes out, and it's I don't know. It's got, once again, still good story and characters, but it's not nearly as strong as how, like, if you compared it to Morrowind or something. Mostly the 3D generation of Elder Scrolls was probably at their strongest. Then you got Oblivion to Witcher 2. Witcher 2 is a great game, and I'm hoping to play more of it. I also had a lot of trouble trying to play that game. It's definitely not a console game. The controls are rough. And once again, it is restrictive to what platforms it's on, where Oblivion, not so much. And Oblivion's pretty goddamn fun. And the remake really helps Oblivion shine even more than it used to. Because of the one problem I had, if I did have to say I liked one better for one reason, it would be art style. I was never a fan of Oblivion's look, where I like Witcher 2's look better. But now it's got a better look with the remake, and I honestly almost think it's better than Skyrim in a lot of ways. It's really good. Though my heart is still with Skyrim. I also wonder how many sales they're actually counting on the games, because, like, are they counting from the original version of Skyrim or all the versions? Because there's VR, there's the remaster version, all sorts of crap. Different console versions, because I feel like that doesn't feel realistic. And then Luke Stevens, I remember saying the reason people probably bought it was the goon. I don't think that's true either, because if that's the case, years from now, we'd probably most likely see Baldur's Gate 3 become the next big selling RPG, because that game, uh, yeah, let's just say the gooning would be stronger there. There's not. Also, technically, a lot of CG Project Red games are very restrictive on their romance partners and stuff, as well as they have very few to start with. Where, unless you count mods, there are tons of freaking romance partners, and technically in the Elder Scroll, or at least Skyrim alone has so many. Then, of course, you add like build your own house, or buy your own home, adopt kids, all that crap, get married, whatever. Maybe your spouse runs a store or something and you make money from that. Yeah, you can build so many roles. The game's much more versatile. Like magic and such is a lot stronger and just more fun, and like experimental than something like The Witcher. Also, you could technically, I can't remember the name of the YouTuber, Frost something. Damn, I can't remember his name, but I remember him saying that he liked Witcher, but there were some things that he was concerned about, and it is certainly a problem I have a lot of games today, like with God of War and such. A lot of Naughty Dog games where they throw so many cutscenes, they take you out of playing the game and stuff, and throw so many cutscenes. And while the cutscenes are great and you love the dialogue, the writing, and the story, it does take you out of the game, and it does, I don't know, it just takes control away from the player a lot. And that could technically be a good or a bad thing depending on the person playing. It's really up to you. But yeah, there's different elements that make them pro and con from one another. I actually think another thing is controls. Like when you're moving around Geralt, of course, when you're horse riding in The Witcher, horse riding's way better than Skyrim. But when you're controlling Geralt, and especially in like enclosed buildings and stuff, he feels like you're playing tank controls from like a Resident Evil game. You can tell with like how you turn your character and all that, and moving around. If it feels kind of tank controlish, even in the third game, where I think the controls are at their best. And of course, they do more of the Morrowind kind of, like you go to a sign or something, and that's how you fast travel, instead of like paying a carriage gold or a silt strider, or unlocking that place and then being able to fast travel to it whenever just by clicking on it on the map. So Skyrim kind of does a mix of both what Oblivion and Morrowind has, where it has the carriage system, but you can also fast travel once you've discovered that location. But yeah, there's different ups and lows to both. It's hard to say which one is truly better. They kind of balance each other out, but I also don't think that they're technically the best of all time. Like, there's even some Final Fantasy games you could argue are better, like Final Fantasy VI. Hell, I love Final Fantasy X even. But there's a lot of games out there. It's hard to say something's the best, but of course, usually the best probably won't do the best, ironically. I think my personal favorite is the Mass Effect series. I think the Mass Effect trilogy, not counting Andromeda. Hell, if that's the case, that game you can technically go into as well. But yeah, Mass Effect 1 through 3 is just such a good role playing series. And the ending, just like Markiplier said, the bad ending of 3 is only like 5% of that entire game. The rest is still freaking amazing. So I don't understand. And when it came, I remember people complaining about glitches with that game. Not nearly as bad as Andromeda, Fallout 76, or when Cyberpunk originally started out. Like, not nearly to that same level. So I don't get people's criticisms and anger towards that. I guess it's the start of some of that kind of stuff, but it wasn't nearly on the same freaking level. Not even close. And if people knew back then what they were getting into later, then. And I don't think that. I feel like CD Projekt Red is very overrated. A lot when it comes to a lot of these other companies. They not only have multiple franchises that they're known for and are legendary, like FromSoft, for example. You got Bloodborne, Sekiro, the Dark Souls trilogy, Demon Souls, Elden Ring. You got so much. So it's not just one series. And of course, if you want to count some of their other stuff like Armored Core and Kingsfield and stuff, you just got a bunch there. They're known for a bunch of things. CD Projekt Red is really only known for Witcher and then eventually Cyberpunk, which I don't agree. I still think manly reviews, beat 'em ups, and at least when it comes to the narrative of that game, and Actman are still very much right and have made some good points that still age well even today about Cyberpunk, but I can see a potentially really good sequel to the game. I also do think the anime is overrated, but it's not bad. I actually prefer it over the freaking game. But here's the weird thing too, the count. They advertised the hell out of freaking Cyberpunk like before it was even known as a really good game to people. Like even Skyrim when that first came out, they didn't have nearly as much merchandise. It's not until later on that they actually have merchandise. Cyberpunk, it was practically immediately action figures, statues. Then they had to be like, oh, we gotta get a freaking anime out and all this comic books, all this kind of crap. And it's like, something feels scummy about that. And I don't think CD Projekt Red is a company that is going to be clean for long if they go a certain direction. I would hope they don't. I would hope they would stay like From Software, but there could be eventual part where they become scummy too and make some bad decisions. Just like Bethesda, there's a ton of freaking companies to fall, sadly, eventually. We just don't know when that is. And Cyberpunk was somewhat proof of that maybe happening if they're not careful next time with like Witcher 4, Witcher Remake, and Cyberpunk 2078. I don't know what they'll call the next one. But yeah, if they're not careful with those games, people are going to be just as pissed at them as they are with freaking Bethesda now. So they got to play their cards right and be very careful. But yeah, and I would hope they would. I want the better to come out of it than the worse. Same with Bethesda, but Bethesda's made too many mistakes at this point. I still love their older games. That will never stop me from loving their older games. But yeah, some of the decisions, and it doesn't help that now Microsoft owns them and all the decisions Microsoft's making right now. God damn. Yeah, no. But the other thing is, like, they're not known for much, and the properties they've made games on are not technically original properties anyways. Like, at least Dragon Age, I think Dragon Age, Elder Scrolls, unless you just count it for Obsidian Fallout, are original like ideas and stuff. They have inspirations, of course, and you can argue the same for Witcher and such. But like I wouldn't say CD Projekt Red is nearly as creative. Also, Witcher has this thing where it's more. I remember Up Is Not Jumps comparison between Skyrim's look and Witcher, where Witcher's more realistic, and the fantastical parts comes from the monsters or the villains. Because like you look at these armor sets and the armor sets and weapons in the game, you're restricted to certain weapons that you use, as well as they're kind of it looks like armor and weapons that belongs in like Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is a game that's meant to be replicating a realistic time period, but this is actually supposed to be fantastical, where Skyrim feels much more fantastical, has cooler armor sets with freaking Daedric armor, dragon scale bone armor, all that kind of stuff, glass armor. It just, yeah, and the magic, of course, unless it's Triss or Yennefer, which you don't get to play as, sadly, isn't nearly as like fun or big and bombastic as like an Elder Scrolls game can be. But yeah, there's a lot of, once again, there's a lot of pros and cons to each that balance them both out, in my opinion. And I think you could argue that the monsters being as fantastical as they are help it to stand out from everything else that looks ordinary, but I don't feel like the cities and such feel nearly as memorable as the cities in like Skyrim or freaking Morrowind and such. I don't know. It's called fantasy. Go all out with it, I usually think to myself and would say. I don't have a good feeling about the next season of Witcher because not only the replacement of the actor, but Liam Hemsworth just seems to be doing his normal voice. He's not even trying to do like a Geralt voice like Henry Cavill did. I think Henry Cavill did a great job. He worked for that, and yeah, the showrunners just did not have respect for the source material. And finally, the last thing to argue with CD Projekt Red being somewhat overrated is the sources that they get this series from. Let me show you some of these others. By the way, these are like comic books and manga and stuff of The Witcher. Got Ronin. Got this one. I think I read this for the channel at one point. Bunch of comic books. These are all Witcher comics. All of these, I can't go through all of them. But yeah, there's a bunch of things. But the only other thing I would have to hold on. The only other argument I could make, and this is one you can still technically say they were just influenced, or they had been influenced by this franchise, same as like Warhammer was to Hawkmoon. You know what I'm about to bring up. And that's if it truly The Witcher isn't as creative as people make out, or is even a ripoff of another series. I don't think it is. I think it still delivers its own unique and fantastical universe. But I will say the one thing, if I am going to push it, I feel like it stole the thunder from a series I feel is better than it, in my opinion. And that is, of course, Elric of Melibone, my Michael Moorcock. I'm not going to totally say that they did take from it, but it does feel like there's a lot of inspiration there. Here are my Elric comics. And there's a lot of similarities and such that are very strikingly close to both. And I still think The Witcher's a great series, but I do think to myself, man, wouldn't it be cool if we saw more action figures and like games of this series, the one that this potentially borrowed from? It just kind of like where this is at least its own idea. Like, yeah, there's influences. You could argue some Lord of the Rings, all that kind of crap. But it at least feels like it's still unique enough. Same as like Dragon Age and such. It's still great and unique, but there's definitely some arguments you can be made that It might have, yeah, borrowed heavily. And what makes it worse is that the original author, which sounds like a dickhead compared to Michael Moorcock, sounds like a really nice guy. Andrei Sapkowski sounds like a dickhead. Always takes a shot at the games and stuff whenever he wants. Even he's freaking trying to bash them or the show. It's like, what the hell's your problem, dude? That you're making money from this. What is wrong with you being a? You feel like you have to be a dickhead. It just leaves a bad taste. And when we could have got this, the same with like ElfQuest. Like ElfQuest is such an awesome, underrated series. I would love to see stuff on that. But then I'm thinking of the positives. Well, if Hollywood made things on one of my favorite series, then they would probably ruin it. Just like Witcher has probably been ruined by some things. Season 3 and Season 4 probably going to be a proof of that for Netflix. But yeah, it can be looked at as a good or bad thing. So once again, there's positives and negatives to make of both. And you can see either side. I think The Witcher is a great series that does deserve to exist. But come on, don't leave Elric behind. Don't frickin' leave stuff like this behind. It's just as good, if not better. Like, come on. This is probably where the source material came from, and you're just ignoring it or not acknowledging it. And that somehow feels worse than anything else you could do. So to not acknowledge it just feels somewhat scummy. Especially the original author. Like, come on, dude. You were totally influenced by this series. At least freaking admit it. You dumbass thought. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite RPG. It doesn't have to be one of these two. And I will see you next time. You have an awesome day. I'll probably should do like a video of me playing either Skyrim or The Witcher 3. Still talking about the similar subject. Or what I can add, talking from the side of one to the other. But, yeah. You have an awesome day nonetheless. Bye-bye.
That's about it. See ya.
Oh. Bye-bye.